Hello everyone and welcome to the LinkedIn Questions webinar as a result of the Brisbane Reinvent Your Career Expo that was held on the weekend of the 21st and 22nd of March 2015. So I'm ready here to ask some questions and see what's available. So I thought I might start with a few questions that I've already received live and get that happening as well. So one of the questions that Rogier has sent through to me is in relation to writing a summary about yourself and what would be the best way to approach this. And he says, I'm sure it has to do with what you want to get out of it. And he's looking at ways to talk about himself in a positive way, particularly as he's now currently looking for work and wants people to recognise and find him. So there's a variety of ways that you can write your summary, and it really depends on what your purpose is. And if your purpose is to look specifically for a job, then I think it's very important that you indicate the types of jobs that you're going to be interested in. And you can state quite clearly, roles that you're interested in are ... and state that up front. You can also do a little bit of a qualifying statement and also indicate how you want to be perceived. So you want people, when they read that information, to say, well, hell yes, I definitely want this person, or hell no, this is not really what I'm looking for. So that can also be an influence in there. Right, next question, moving along from there. Finding jobs is pretty difficult. On the seminar you mentioned that 90% of jobs are not advertised. And when using LinkedIn, finding a job only shows me project manager jobs, and now wants to go into something else. So your jobs settings can be aligned on the interests section, where you can also see companies and groups. And if you choose the jobs button, you can then choose the types of jobs and the preferences you'd like to set for the jobs that you're interested in. So LinkedIn is automatically going to send you jobs based on the content of your current LinkedIn profile. So that's probably why you're receiving details about project managers' jobs. But if you want to go into something else like marine engineering, then you can indicate that that's your interest and that's your keywords. In terms of what is the best way to describe your previous work, what I like to do here is, first of all, mention a little bit of information about the organisation. So Westpac is the first bank in Australia, started in 1917, one of the big four, blah, blah, blah. You can go on and describe a little bit about the organisation. And then what I like to look at is tasks rather than responsibilities. So I actually want to know when I read someone's profile that it includes this, that, and the other. So really important that those dot points indicate the specific tasks completed in that job. What the concern I have with the word responsibilities is you can be responsible for something but not actually do anything. So that's why I like the word tasks, and for you to actually indicate those in terms of your experience. The third section in that box I like to write is your achievements. And your achievements can be in all of the normal things: increase sales by 25%. Obviously, you don't want to include commercially sensitive information, but it can also be things like you were seconded to a project in another location, you were invited to participate in a special project, you were selected to complete leadership training, you were anything that was above and beyond the original job description, and that is definitely something that you conclude as an achievement. Should the LinkedIn profile be a copy of your resume or something extra? Well, the way I see it, the resume should be matched to the specific job that you're applying for. So if you're applying for a marine engineer job, then it should be specifically all the skills related to marine engineering. But your LinkedIn resume or your LinkedIn profile can have everything that you've done in the past, whether it's marine engineering, project management, whatever. The whole lot can go in. Where you want to be very specific and tailor your message, aligned again with your purpose, is in the headline. So that would have the keywords of where you want to go. Also your photograph to sort of represent you nicely, and the summary section at the top. So even though you might, have had a very, very different background, your summary can be really where you pitch what you want to be doing next. It needs to include your contact details so that people can actually reach out to you. And it also needs to include a call to action. So call me if you're interested in such and such. And some people like to write, well, you know, please don't hesitate to contact me. And I say, well, please don't think of a pink elephant. And then, of course, you do think of a pink elephant. So it's not a good idea to say, please do not hesitate to contact me. It says, please contact me if, you know, and that's a much better way to do things there. So, yeah, I hope that helps as well. So please send through your questions. I can see that I've got 12 viewers on the webinar at the moment, and I'm presuming that something should happen. As I mentioned to you in the email I sent out this afternoon, that this is the first time I'm using this particular software, and interested to see how it works and what's going to work best for us in the future. So if you can see a chat box and you wish to include a question or send something through, that would be fantastic. Or click the Q&A. Obviously, I'm not on video. I'm just doing an audio presentation this evening, and more than happy to answer questions that you may have. So waiting to hear from you guys. And if I can't hear any questions, it'll be a very short webinar tonight. So hopefully there will be a few things come through. And don't be afraid, there's no such thing as a silly question. It was really great fun being in Brisbane on the weekend. I must admit it was much warmer than I expected, and I guess the humidity had something to do with that. But and obviously I got caught in the rain on Sunday and a little bit on Saturday as well. So that was quite interesting. Very, very wet in Brisbane, and interesting because you know it's wet in Melbourne sometimes, but really soaking rain, and we're watching water come down stairways even on the way back to the hotel on Sunday night. So that was quite interesting. And still waiting for any other questions. I feel like we should have some music playing in the background here because, yeah. Okay, really keen to hear from you guys. I shall check my emails in case there's been something come through there. And can't see anything there. Thank you to those people who did accept my invitation to connect on LinkedIn. Also, I'm happy to announce that we do have a winner for the 2-hour consulting session, which was Christy. And so congratulations to Christy. If you're on the call, well done. And I'll be organising a time with you very soon to have a 2-hour consultation. As I mentioned in my email this afternoon, anybody who is willing to put out a question, they can also get a 10% discount from any future booking of my professional services on the topic of LinkedIn. I did also receive one question from Joe this afternoon about how he could get more than 2,000 characters in the summary of his LinkedIn profile. And as it turns out, there is a limit. You can only have 2,000 characters on your summary section, but obviously in the all the different sections of LinkedIn, you can put a lot more content elsewhere. So if you're not able to really tell your story in that 2,000 characters of the summary, you're more than welcome to obviously include it in your experience, I found for a lot of people, writing it up as a project is a really great idea, particularly if you've got specialties in particular areas. And then, you know, even in your qualifications, in your degree, you can list all of your subjects, and that's going to be really great for getting more keywords across as well. So I just think, you know, there's many sections. The summary is one that a lot of people who are going to visit your profile are most likely to be wanting to read. So that's really cool. Yes, Tess has just sent me a message saying there are a number of questions in the chat bar. So let's see if we can find the chat bar here, because I cannot see it on my screen. Perhaps, Tess, if you can copy those questions across and email them to me, I will see if I can see them from there, because I definitely want to answer your questions. So that would be really cool if I can get those through. Or if you can even tell me in there what the questions might, where I can find the chat bar on the screen. This is the joy of using technology for the first time, and always a good idea to test it out, definitely before you get into more advanced webinars and more complex topics and so on. The plan is obviously for me to run more webinars in the future. And again, thank you for registering for this one. Glad to hear that we've still got those 10 people on the call. So really appreciate you hanging around while I try and nut this stuff out. But yeah, the answer, Roger, is no, I can't see the questions on the chat bar. So if somebody can send those through, copy and paste it from the screen, that would be absolutely fantastic. And I will keep checking my emails to see if when they come through. Right. Should you include your GPA with your qualifications? Thanks, Tess. I have got those through now. Okay. GPA is something that it depends on whether it's relevant for you and the profile that you want to be seen as. So obviously, if you've got an international qualification, and well, particularly if it's high and it's really related very specifically for the type of work you're looking for, obviously putting that on is going to look fantastic. But I think the most important thing to be found under is keywords. And what's more valuable in my mind is the actual subject titles, because that's what somebody is more likely to be searching for. When I was in recruitment for Westpac, and I reviewed all the graduates' resumes and their profiles, we had an assessment process, and we had a little rating sheet, and we would measure a variety of things when we were considering applicants for our grads program. And believe it or not, a high GPA was not the most important priority. For Westpac, we actually wanted a well-rounded individual. So somebody with a modest GPA and then involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, in our mind, was actually considered to be a far better quality candidate than somebody who just had a high GPA. So if you're nervous about it, I suggest leave it off. If it's really great, I suggest put it on. But more importantly, get those subjects in, because that's going to be better. Should one add job specialties in the summary section of LinkedIn? I think if it's keyword related in relation to the purpose of what you want to achieve on LinkedIn, absolutely. And particularly if somebody could be looking for those keywords when they're doing a search for somebody with your skill set on LinkedIn. So at the Reinvent Your Career Expo, I talked about the highest priority places where you can have those keywords, and the first one being your headline, the second one being your current job title. So you can actually write HR manager and then dash learning and development, organizational development, performance management, etc. So you can put all those keywords after your job title, and that really, really maximizes your ability to get good results out of the the actual keywords in your job title. You can do the same in your past job titles. The next most important section will be in your education. So if some of those titles are also in the subjects, that's fantastic. And the final one is in your summary section. So that's why it is a really good idea to put those keywords in your summary section. So if you are connected to me, there is a lady who is connected to me whose profile I've done some work on. Her name is Linda Galbally, and I've sought her permission to share her profile with many people. So it's Linda and then Galbally, Galbally. And that gives you a format for outlining your background on LinkedIn. So particularly if you're just looking for a traditional type of job, full-time type thing, you'll see that I've started off in Linda's profile with, first of all, a statement of her present capabilities. Linda is a such and such. Then her past, she started her career as, and then her future, she's now interested in roles in. Then I've given some qualifying information. So when somebody looks at her profile, they can say hell yes or hell no. They want to consider her for the role. And then her professional skills, her technical skills, and her personal skills. So all of those can be categories of information that you put in your summary. And because they're written mostly as dot points, it makes it much, much easier to read. Next question is, can you please elaborate on what the LinkedIn Premium Upgrade service provides? And honestly, I don't believe it's worth paying for LinkedIn Premium unless you have done the first three things that I talked about, which is putting in your keywords, putting them in frequently, and being active on LinkedIn. But if you're doing all of that and you're not getting the exact benefits that you want out of it, some of the other things that you can do include, you will find that you can search for anybody on LinkedIn. So whether they're a first level connection or a second level connection or not connected in any way at all to you, you will be able to find more people on LinkedIn. So this means you can actually find potential mentors, potential employers, potential people that you want to network with. Secondly, when you come up in search results, if one person has exactly the same information as you and you have the premium account, you will come up first in search results. So premium members are given priority in search results. Thirdly, you will be perceived as being able to afford premium, which, you know, depending on the position that you're aiming for, that could be seen as a good thing. Fourth, you can get far greater analytics on what is happening with your LinkedIn profile. So, for example, you can see the last 90 days of people who've looked at your profile. So you can see some trends and whether you're attracting the right people looking at your profile. You can see how people found you. You can see the keywords that they were searching for. There's a lot more analytics that will appear in the LinkedIn Premium service. Also, if you apply for a job on LinkedIn, what it's going to do is the recruiter who is looking at the applications, your name is going to come up higher in the priority list. So yeah, if provided you've done the keywords, the frequency of keywords, and are active on LinkedIn, if you've done all of that and you're all ready and willing to really be active, try the 1 month free premium and really blitz the market and see how you go. I can look at a profile and perhaps make an analysis, but I'll answer some more general questions first. Should you accept all invitations to connect? Well, believe it or not, I accept pretty much everybody, but that's because I run a network. And if anybody's a nuisance, I will remove them. But more importantly, LinkedIn usually removes them before I even remove them. So that's a really good thing. And if somebody is annoying, you can report them as a spammer if you're getting correspondence that you don't wish to receive. So your ability to accept invitations is really based on your purpose. So if you run networks like me, go for it. If you want to be known as a specialist in a very, very narrow field and not be connected to anybody else outside of that, well, then that can be your choice. And you can say, no, I won't accept other invitations to connect. But I sort of work on the theory there's more to abundance than not. So I'm, definitely in favor of, probably connecting to more people than not. But I have received some strange requests from dubious looking people, internationally with no connections, etc., etc. And yeah, that's not I usually say no to those people. You know, I'm reasonably prudent, and I do like to check in and see, you know, what's happening there. So yeah, so that's another really good way to check things out, and you know, just look into the profiles first. And if you want to, you can go anonymous first before you look at their profile. But yeah, it's up to you ultimately whether you choose to connect or not. Yes, there will be a recording of this webinar available. I'm assuming the technology will work and that will happen. It seems to be linking with Google Hangouts. Not sure quite how that happens, but either way, I will try and work out how to make that happen and get things through to you. Next question is it necessary that the profile should be in third form? So I presume what you're talking about is the language that you use and in the third person. And I write my profile in the third person because if I write it I, but I'm reading the profile about somebody else, I'm actually thinking about me. So it's harder to remember whether I'm thinking about me or I'm thinking about the person. But if I write my profile as Sue Ellson started her career and she's done this and she's done that, and you're reading it, then at the end of it, you know all about Sue. And so it's much easier to remember. But some people do prefer the personal approach, and if that's what you prefer, that's perfectly fine, and you can definitely write it in the first person. What I would suggest, though, is that you be very, very careful about how often you use the word I, because if you write I, by the end of it, as a typical Australian, I'll be very concerned about how that comes across, and it really doesn't look good. So, yeah, more than happy for you to write in the first person. You can also write it in the no person, you know, no reference to anybody's name. But you also need to remember that even your name is a key word, because if somebody's heard about you and your skills, then they'll be Googling your name. So even writing your name and putting that in your summary is another way to maximize your name as a keyword. So that can work really well for you as well. Now, my question is how to print out recommendations that people recommended on my profile. Well, what you can do is you can save your profile to PDF, and that way you can see a full copy of your profile and all the recommendations, and then you could just copy and paste that and print it out. You could also probably do a screenshot if you wanted to and create little images, and but I'm not quite sure where you're planning to use those recommendations. There is a statement that I read recently that if you have 6 or more recommendations, that's going to help you far more than either 0 or 3 maybe. So definitely aim for getting up to 6 recommendations or even more. I think I've got nearly 40 recommendations on my profile now. And yeah, I think it helps. It puts your name on that person's profile and that person's name on your profile if they write one for you. And also you can decide whether or not you want to have the profile or the recommendation on your profile. And you can do that if you just type in linkedin.com/recommendations, and that will take you to the page where you can manage all of your recommendations. So thank you, Tess, for keeping me up to date with the other questions on the platform. The next one is, I'm a new arrival in Australia. How can I convince local employers that my international experience is an advantage? And trying the private and the public button. Okay, so what you really need to do is explain your skills in a way that an Australian understands it. So if you say, oh, well, I'll give you an example. When I first arrived in Melbourne, I kept saying when I was at work, well, in Adelaide we did this and in Adelaide we did that, and nobody was really interested in what I did in Adelaide. So then what I learned was I had to say, in the past, I have done X, you know. So what you really need to do is just state it, you know, managed projects, supervised staff, you know, whatever it is that you've been doing. But anything that may be unfamiliar to an Australian audience. So I think I might have used the example in one of the sessions on the weekend about the grip test engineer. A lot of people are not going to know what a grip test engineer does, and you might have a skill set from your international experience that nobody in Australia knows anything about. So if that's the case, you really need to be able to explain something about that particular skill set so that people can understand what it is that's been said. So you know, if you explain that a grip test engineer is the person who assesses whether the car's going to roll over or not, and this can include an assessment of brakes, tyres, vehicle design, weight, aerodynamics, driver capability, road conditions, humidity, you know, whatever, then all of a sudden I'm starting to see, well, actually, you know what? That is a very complex engineering question. Whilst that person has been able to previously apply it to the automotive industry, it could possibly be used in many other areas. It could be used for boats or aeroplanes or trucks or, you know, something or another else. Or it could just be used in an entirely different field altogether, because the person reading that information understands that that person has the ability to process, review, research, whatever, quite a lot of information, and that's a transferable skill set. So definitely need to do that. The other thing that local employers want is they want to see some Australian experience. So you can get that by doing some voluntary work or even a part-time job in a pizza shop. So if you were concerned about the fact, well, I've got to earn money just to live, still put that detail on your LinkedIn profile, because then you can actually explain that you've got local experience. And in the pizza shop, you could have been doing customer service, you could have been managing staff, you could have been working with suppliers. I mean, all of those things are still terrific skills, and rather than just say make pizzas, deliver pizzas, you know, that's not as much. But if you start thinking about some of the other things you've been incorporating and meeting food and safety health requirements and working in an occupational health and safe way and so on, you can actually start to include some keywords that might be suitable for any other type of role that you could be applying for. So lots of different ways that you can convince people that your international experience is definitely of use in Australia. And also you want to really make it sound for it to be easily understood. And so, yes, try and talk in a conversational tone. I think if you're a little bit too formal, that might not go down as well in the Australian context. All right. In my profile, it says one person viewed you. When I click on this to go into profile views, the screen is blank. Is this because the user chose to be anonymous? Okay, so if you want to see who's been looking at your profile, you have to have your profile turned on. So if you go to privacy and settings, on the top right hand where your little picture is on the screen, there's a drop down box, privacy and settings, and you have to choose the section in the middle of the screen that says select what others see when you've viewed their profile. And you have to tick the top or the second box there. So I always leave it my full details, because if you've chosen to keep yourself anonymous, you will not be able to see the last 5 people who've been looking at you on the free account. If you have the premium account, you can keep yourself anonymous and still see who's been looking at you, provided they haven't turned themselves to anonymous. So yeah, you need to have your profile turned on. If you want to be anonymous when you go stalking other people, you can turn yourself to anonymous, go stalking, come back, turn yourself back on. But if you want to be seeing who's been viewing you, you have to have your profile sort of turned on. And I believe that if you really are going to be active in the job market, you need to be attracting at least 100 views per 90 days. So if you're not attracting 100 views per 90 days, then it's really not providing you with the best results, in my view. So, you know, just keep that in mind. And thanks again, Tess, for keeping me informed with questions, and I'll keep on going. Okay. Internet found me when you answered the first question about the summary. Could you please repeat that? Okay, so again, in terms of the summary, make it sure that it's aligned with your current purpose. Use dot points, include your contact details. So some of the other things you can include is your mobile phone number written in the international format, so +61 space 402 space 243 space 271. That means if I'm looking at your profile on my mobile, then I can just press it and it will call. Include your email address, but put spaces between the first part, the @ symbol, and the last part, because if you have your full email address on the internet, spam robots can find it and you'll end up with a whole bunch of spam. And I also encourage you in that section to include Skype by appointment, because even though the job may be in Brisbane, somebody in Sydney may wish to interview you, or somebody internationally or whatever. So if you write Skype by appointment, that means that an interview can be conducted internationally or interstate, and it won't be difficult for you. So I've added a little bit more information there. I'm also going to suggest that because LinkedIn is operating like a lot of websites now, we have to click to see sort of the second part of the information, is that you include those contact details right up the top so that, you know, people can see that instantly. The other benefit to putting your email address there, if you don't want to, say, for instance, put your mobile phone number there, is that people can contact you immediately. Whereas if you don't have that contact information there, then they're going to have to wait until you accept their connection request or you get the email or whatever. So that can reduce your chances of being considered for opportunities. So I tend to make myself as available as I possibly can. And if you do look at my profile, you'll see that my mobile phone number and my various email addresses are listed right throughout my profile, so that they don't even have to scroll back up to the top to see my contact details. And my mobile phone number is all over the internet, on websites, on social media, on LinkedIn, it's everywhere. But my phone doesn't ring off the hook because the message I send is extremely clear about what I do, how I offer it, and so on. And so for that reason, it means that I can, you know, really just, you know, get calls from people who want to book appointments. So it works really, really well for me. Okay, more questions. Awesome answer. Thanks, sir. Can you please repeat? Linda. Ah, yes. Her next part of her name is Galbally. Galbally. Linda Galbally. And her profile is not perfect, but it's a really good summary and a short view. So that profile is a really good sample one to use. You can see that it's very consistent in the format that I've used for each experience. She hasn't included the subjects in her degree and stuff like that, which I do recommend. So encourage all of you as often as you wish to look at my profile. No need for you to go anonymous. I'll be saying, fantastic, you're actually updating your profile, and I'll be thrilled to see that you're keeping up to date and looking at, you know, what's available and different ways to word things. And again, you know, really based on what your purpose is and what's going to align with your goals. So yeah, just keep that up. Please send through emails again if there's any more questions. One of the other things that I'd like to quickly touch on, just until I get any more emails, is the concept of how do you cope with gaps, because there's a lot of people who are not working full-time for various lengths of time. There's a guy I was working with today, and he's been in his own video production business for about 15 years, but he's also been a primary carer for his daughter and has had various other things happening as well. But the actual date when he first started that was 15 years ago. So you can actually sort of say, well, it started then and it's still going. So if you are not working full time, but you have a role with the SES, for instance, you know, you can write that up and include that in your experience section. So you'll notice in my section, there's two particular things I'd like to point out if you are looking at my profile. The first one is, after my career at Westpac, for the next 6 years, I've grouped all of the jobs I've done together in one category under Sue Ellson. And you can see it just lists a sample of employers and tasks completed. Now, some of those jobs were literally 1 day here and there. Other jobs were 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, etc., etc. But all in all, the entire time span covered was 6 years. And so that's a way of making sure that I don't have any gaps on my resume and any gaps on my LinkedIn profile. In terms of my voluntary roles, I am a Victorian counsellor on the Australian Human Resources Institute Council here in Victoria. So that is a role that I consider that uses very much my professional skills aligned to my professional work. So I have included that, even though it's a voluntary position, in my experience section. And you'll notice if you look a little bit deeper that it's also in my voluntary section. But then some of the other voluntary work that I've done with Scouts, so I've participated in 2 Scouts jamborees, 1 cabaret, heaps and heaps of, Scout camps and activities. As a parent helper only, I'm not an official, collar wearing, shirt wearing Scout leader, but I've been a parent helper, and that's a voluntary position. And I don't want to be getting work in hospitality. So I was involved in helping feed 1,200 people 3 times a day at the Jamboree for 2 weeks, and at the Cabaret 300 people 3 times a day. And when I went to the Sydney Jamboree, I was taking people out sailing, for 2 weeks on Sydney Harbour, which was a pretty good gig, I have to say. But I see those very much as voluntary positions and not really related to my professional experience. So that's why I've included those just in personal ones and in voluntary only. But the ones that are really aligned with my work, I like to include those as, in the professional experience section. Okay. I have experience in various domains, but for resume, we can modify as per job description. But what should we do with the LinkedIn profile if there are multiple roles? Okay, well, you'll see my LinkedIn profile is very much War and Peace, and I've gone into the details of heaps and heaps of stuff about all the different things I've done. But what I've tried to do is make it very clear in my headline and in my summary, this is what I do now. So I see no trouble at all with including all of your experience. And if you think about some of the jobs that you've done in the past, so I've done training. And I first started training in 1987, but that particular job started in 1982. But I've done training in several other jobs throughout my career. So you'll actually find that in several other roles listed on my LinkedIn profile, I've included that word training. And I'm still training today. I teach at the Centre for Adult Education here in Melbourne. And obviously I run workshops, so I'm training then. So yeah, there's a lot of training that I've done. And so I keep that word training in. And if I wanted to, say I decided tomorrow I'm going to be a counsellor, well, then I'd go back through more my old jobs, and any component of my job that involved counselling, provided it was part of what I did in that job, I would actually add that word in. So, again, depending on your purpose, you can incorporate those words. So if we go back to the Linda Galbally reference, she was a lawyer and she wanted to get into the art world. And so some of the words from the legal background and her other job experience, we've been able to reuse those words in her profile. So, when you're dealing with artworks, you've got to process them, you've got to manage them, you've got to source artists, and that all those sorts of words are words that can be used in other roles that she has done. So definitely your keywords can be used across multiple things. Also, if your resume is going into a database system, a recruitment system, or sometimes they're called applicant tracking systems, and I'm a recruiter and I'm looking through the database of resumes, and I'm looking for somebody who has training experience, I can actually say, well, I want somebody who's had a minimum of 5 years training experience. And what it will do is it will go through those resumes and find all the applicants who've had a minimum of 5 years of training experience based on the date when that word first appeared in their resume. So, really, really useful to include those keywords that you want to be known for. Can we write the name of our certifications completed in front of the name on LinkedIn? Okay. I'm a little bit hesitant to include post-nominals and other titles, unless you're a doctor, on your LinkedIn profile. And I know some people do this, but at the end of the day, I want people to recognize me as Sue Ellson. That's who I am as a person. So where I like to put certifications is at the beginning of my profile. So Sue Ellson, BBUS, AIMM, MARI, etc. All those post-nominals and certifications come with my name at the beginning of my summary section. And I just feel that that's a bit friendlier and a bit more appropriate to include those certifications there. And it's Also really important to fill out the certifications section on your LinkedIn profile. So if you have a membership of a professional association. So I'm a member of ARI and a member of the Australian Institute of Management. So I've actually listed them as certifications because to become a member of those organisations, I had to meet certain requirements. And where it says license number, that is where I have included my membership number. And obviously the date of my certification is when I joined, and provided I keep paying for my membership, then I can keep that certification alive and well. So if that certifying association or organisation has a company profile on LinkedIn, then obviously that's going to look good on your profile and have a little bit of bling there so that that can be seen as well. So that works really well. Tess, if you can send any further email questions through, that'd be great. Otherwise, I think we're nearing the end of questions that I've seen come through. I certainly hope you found tonight's webinar informative. I'm also happy to answer general questions via email. So if you come up with a question after tonight, by all means, you can shoot that through to me. By asking a question tonight, you're entitled to a 10% discount on my services. I normally recommend 2 sessions of 2 hours for $460, including GST. So 10% off. You take off $46 from that, and we can do it via Skype and or in person here in Melbourne if you're going to be here. Also, if you're in Brisbane, Claire McAuliffe runs the Living, Working and Networking in Brisbane event on the second Wednesday of each month. So if you'd like to meet other people who've moved to Brisbane, or even if you're a local and you'd like to meet some people who've moved to Brisbane, you're most welcome to join her. We meet at the South Bank Surf Club at South Bank from 6 till 7:30 p.m. on the back deck area. A very nice venue, which I checked out whilst I was in Brisbane on the weekend. Very friendly staff as well. You just pay for your own drinks. There's no cost to attend. Also, if you look on the sueellson.com website and you look under both the publications page and the presentations page, what you will find is a list of various articles that I've written, which gives a really good summary. And in some cases where I've done presentations, I include recordings and slideshows and all that kind of stuff as well. So not for every single one that I do, but quite a lot have got that. And over the next few days, I'll be putting up the slides and also the audio recording from the Reinvent Your Career Expo on the weekend. I'm hoping to be at the Brisbane and Sydney ones later this year, the Melbourne and Sydney ones later this year in May and October. And I'm off to speak at the Career Development Association Australia Conference in Perth in April. So I get out and about quite a lot and can also fly back to Brisbane if your organisation would like to have a presentation there as well. Okay, still hoping if there's any more questions to answer them immediately. Because, you know, the really good thing about asking a question here is that everybody else gets to hear the answer as well, and it might be a question that you haven't necessarily thought of. So really good if you have any other questions. And I'm really intrigued to find out where these chat questions are, because I definitely cannot see them on my screen. Okay, any other questions coming through? I'm just going to do one last send. No more questions, Tessa says. So thank you, everybody, for your participation tonight. As I said, it was great to be in Brisbane on the weekend. My name's Sue Ellson. I'm an independent LinkedIn specialist, not paid by LinkedIn. Thank you for your participation, and I trust you've gained some useful information and tips from tonight's webinar. And hopefully it'll all record well, and we'll have this available to you afterwards. And thanks again, and good night.